Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Peaceful here. We are talking today about the good cards archetype. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of a deck guide for you. So, just so you understand exactly what I'm talking about, the good cards archetype is typically a deck revolving around Zabu, Darkhawk, Rockslide, that core of cards, often combined with Black Bolt Stature, and then the light move package of Polaris, Miles, and Jeff in order to get you exactly what it sounds like, just a pile of good cards, efficient cards that give you a lot of power on rate. You run things like Shang, you run things like Enchantress, and you just have a lot of utility, a lot of answers to what your opponent is doing, and just a ton of tempo. This is one of my favorite archetypes, as you probably know. If you're subscribed to the channel, you'll see I have a ton of videos on Darkhawk. He's one of my favorite cards, and I just got the Spotlight Cash variant of them, so of course I'm happy to play different variations of this deck. So a few pointers I want to give out with this deck before we get into it. First off, since I'm going to get a ton of questions on this, no, there is not an exact replacement for Jeff. If you have Silk, that's a great replacement because it fulfills a lot of what the role in this particular archetype is looking for, because you want something that moves. You want something that activates your Miles Morales and turns it into a one drop. That is a big part of why Jeff is in the deck. That is why Polaris is in the deck. But it is not required, especially in the second variation of this deck that you're going to see that I'm actually running for the gameplay portion of this video, the Legion version of this deck. Jeff is a lot more replaceable. You can play basically any solid two drop that you want. You know, a lot of people like to throw in. I think my go-to right now for most players, since most players seem to have this, is Luke Cage, because there is still a lot of high Evo running around. High Evo decks are still strong. So if you want to beat that particular archetype, Luke Cage can really help with the surprise factor. You play it later in the game and just eliminate all of that negative point spread that they put on your units. That said, other than that, there's not really any replacements for this deck. You really need those Series 5 cards. So if you don't have those Series 5 cards, I recommend running a different variation of this deck. We did just get buffs to Captain Marvel and Absorbing Man. So if you don't have Iron Lad, I actually do like Absorbing Man in that spot. I I will say it is worse. So just keep that in mind. The point of power matters a whole lot of times, and just the high roll factor that you can get off of the Iron Lad, especially with the Legion version of this deck, is just pretty cool. So keep that in mind. So replacements again, Jeff, Silk if you have it. If not, try and put something in there that offers you some utility, and then Iron Lad you can sub in Absorbing Man. Now, general gameplay tips for this deck. This deck may seem pretty straightforward. The thing I see a lot of people making mistakes on is the when to move cards and when to set up your miles. So think about the curve that you normally have. When you have Zabu on 2, that gets a lot easier because you're just playing 3-drop into 3-drop, uh, 1-drop into 3-drop, 2-drop into, whatever you have at the end there. If you're playing the Black Bolt Stature version of this deck, a lot of times on 5, you want to play Black Bolt. So that kind of can complicate your turns a lot. That's honestly the turn that I usually like to move Jeff. And when I'm playing the Black Bolt Stature versions of the deck, is if you have Miles in hand, you can, play Black Bolt on 5, move Jeff. Then if you have Stature in hand, Miles in hand, you have, either a 3-cost 4-drop or a 4-drop into Miles Stature. And then if you have the Zabu in play, obviously you get one extra energy floating there that you can use for something else if you have it. I tend not to like running too many 1-drops in this deck, mostly because you can sub in Killmonger a lot of times is a very good tech option. The big key to this deck is understanding tempo and understanding when you're ahead and understanding what matchups it's important to play your Black Bolt into. I personally, as you'll see from the gameplay video being of the other deck, don't like the Black Bolt Stature version as much right now because you are so locked into having to play that Black Bolt on 5 if you have it to enable your Stature that it really limits what plays you can make going into that turn. The reason I prefer the Legion version of this deck is that Legion just offers you a ton of free wins right now. There's just a ton of locations that really screw over a lot of the big decks. Think of something like Crimson Cosmos against Surfer. That's one of my favorite examples. Any of the locations that make creatures, so like the squirrel locations like Central Park, can really screw over your opponent if they make some play on 5, like Sarah planning to go wide on turn 6, and you squirrel them, and then suddenly other locations are full of squirrels. That's just a game you win very easily. Makes for a very easy snapping, and That's just the version I prefer to play right now, and I'll have that list posted on this video as well. You've probably already seen it flashing beside me here on the screen. So last thing I want to get into is key on snapping and retreating. For those of you who remember the original Zabu meta, where you were getting snapped on turn 3 every time they had Zabu, and you're like, oh, okay, this is a Zabu deck. It's very similar with this. If you have Zabu on 2, you should snap. I don't care what else is in your hand. And you have Zabu on 2, you're doing what the deck's trying to do, you should snap. Another example of a good snap is when you have Black Bolt Stature against the deck that you know you're going to hit a key card with. It can be really, really powerful. Any hand where you have Zabu plus Black Bolt and Stature early enough that you can snap it before your opponent knows what's going on is a good snap. Just keep that in mind. It's also very matchup dependent. I think one of the reasons this deck is so strong right now is you're really, really strong into the lockdown decks because you can just put down such an insane amount of power early. A lot of times they storm you on 3 and you just go Darkhawk Miles on the storm location, and then like how are they ever winning that? Something to keep in mind is if you know what matchup you're playing against, like in Conquest mode, say it's round 3 or 4, and they snap you on turn 2 or 3, that probably means they have storm, and that's a really good opportunity for you to snap back if you have a strong hand. So keep those things in mind. Retreating with this deck is super easy. That's one of the reasons I think this deck is so favored right now in the metagame and why so many people are playing it is you just have very obvious lines for when you should snap and retreat. You should basically always retreat when you don't have early tempo. So if you don't have a Zabu, if you don't have like Jeff into Miles or Jeff Polaris Miles, something like a good 2, 3, 4 curve, just retreat. You know, you can stick around as long as it's still for 1 cube, but the second that they snap you, you need to leave. And that's something I think this deck really rewards is discipline with your snapping and retreating. This deck's not very good if you're not going to snap and retreat properly. I'm just going to tell you that. I've had people tell me, I don't understand how you win with these decks. I don't understand how people win with Black Bolt Stature decks. They seem so bad. They seem so inconsistent, blah, blah, blah. Well, Marvel Snap, most of the decks have good draws and then they have like their really mediocre draws. And I think you're rewarded as a player when you make the proper calls on when you should snap and retreat. It's just a huge part of this deck. Now, look, one of the biggest things with snapping and retreating, and I'm going to make a video on this. So let me know in the comments if this is something you really want to see. But I'm planning on making a video around just snapping and retreating in general and what common mistakes I see and, you know, not letting things like, you know, hindsight bias affect your snapping and retreating moving forward in a matchup. But I mean, everybody goes through those times where you snap your Zabu 3 or 4 times in a row and just lose because your opponent just draws better than you, especially in the mirror. You know, you might snap on 2 because you have Zabu, but if they have Zabu as well and then they just have a better curve, you're going to lose. You know, that just happens. That's part of playing the game. It's just like in poker. You can have a really good hand. You place a bet and then your opponent just has the nuts and you end up losing anyway. That's part of the game. So my recommendation to you with this deck is do not let emotions get the better of you. You're going to lose sometimes when you snap your Zabu, but you know, most of the time that is a winning play. Snapping on turn 2 when you have Zabu with a good setup, you're going to win a lot of those games. You're going to have a lot of powerful lines to get you to victory no matter what your matchup is. That's why this is one of the best decks in the game. So keep that in mind. Please do not let those times that you get kind of sniped on your snaps make you gun shy from going for it because it is the correct play. That's how you win with this deck. I've won plenty of matchups with my Zabu Darkhawk decks where I win a 4 cuber, a 4 cuber, and then a 2 cuber, and they win a 1 cuber, a 1 cuber, a 1 cuber, a 1 cuber because they just aren't snapping, and it just gives me more and more opportunities to get my good draws. So in any matchup, if you have a good draw, you should take advantage. Punish your opponent for their bad draws and reward yourself for your good draws. That's really all I have for this deck. I think this is one of my favorite archetypes in the game right now. Anyone who probably has watched my stream or watched my videos knows I have a ton of Darkhawk videos. Other than Thanos, it's probably my favorite archetype. So I hope this video helps you sort of learn the ins and outs of the deck. We'll be going through and doing a more thorough discussion on things like substitutions and snapping and retreating next week. So let me know what y'all think about that, what you want to see. One last thing, if you could, please, if you enjoy the content, shoot me a subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see more of, what decks you would like to see deck guides for. I love making these. I think this is probably my favorite thing to do right now as far as making content. So any decks that you want to see some deck guides on, please let me know so I can get those ready for you. All right. Have a great day. They're just doing that to try and get extra cubes. So when I have a good hand, I'm actually going to get them back. That was just a standard Hulk. That wasn't a So we can Darkhawk here pretty safely. I like that. Shang! Oh, don't mind if I do, thank you. Double Shang. You earned out enough medals to get everything you wanted. Well, that's good, but it still sucks to go. How elite did you? So the first 2 runs I did this month, I got to 4 wins and then lost. So hopefully you didn't at least have to deal with that, because that would have sucked. What do you got? Is it just this? I kind of want to go for... I think I'm going to. We're going to go for like rocks off of this. We got 2 hits for rocks. Let's freaking go.
All systems go.
Now what's the play? We should win over here anyway, right? Well, the Shang over here doesn't do anything, so we should do Shang here, here. Problem with that play is, and if they play big here, we lose. Do we? Yeah, we do. So maybe it's like this. This is 15, 19 here. So they have to play like something pretty big here. I like this. That doesn't do anything. Got him. Spider-Man, Morales. So they. It's likely there's like a Polaris in there. Haven't seen any high Evo cards, so it might be standard lockdown. Found this on today. Actually, nice. Yeah, it's like a Galaxy, Guardians of the Galaxy style lockdown deck. Kind of cool. I dig it. It's a great rocket. It's so unlikely that we draw the I feel like they're what are they snapping for? Maybe they storm? Yep.
Wind.
There's no reason to play this in our deck. This is awkward. They played left, so is it an Enchantress? Are we getting an Enchantress? I didn't really think this was an Enchantress deck. Maybe it's a Shang deck. It could be Shang. So let's see what they got. There's a lot to be said to doing like kind of what our opponent's doing and just having a deck that's really hard to know what the hell is going on. It's brutal. I'm so confused. Why did they snap? They don't have anything big enough to play over here. The biggest thing they had in hand was the... I think I'm going to play Jeff here. We'll see if this comes back to bite me. Yep. What can they play for 4? Nothing big enough. Oh, dude, let's go. I think they tried to bluff snap me there. I think they were trying to psych me out. Let's go. 8 cuber. So they have Enchantress. We need to keep that in mind. Yeah. I just haven't seen anything big enough from them to beat that. I guess if they had Gamora, they would have tied. I don't know. That gets weird. Gamora makes it better to play the. No, because we still would have tied mid. I don't know. That's really weird. I think we snap here. Make them stay for the 2. W all around. Yeah. The 8 cubers are just like so good. Jeff! Well, that's rude. Storm? You don't have to move this yet.
Wind, aid my
Are they Enchantress? Nope. Okay. All right, so we go Legion right here, right? Turns this back on.
Friendly neighborhood spider.
So they can Enchantress mid, but then like what else are they doing with their life? I think we'll still have more total power than them. This looks like a good one to me. Not even close, chat.